Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Cleantech Race. We are recording in Bonn, Germany today, and we have a special topic. We are talking about innovation. And we are talking about innovation in a particular industry. This is utilities, representing large companies that provide the population and industry with commodities like electricity, natural gas, or water. And innovation in this industry, which is so critical for the energy transition, is particularly difficult. To discuss this, we have an exceptional set of panelists here in the room today, and I'd like to welcome them all to this episode of our series, the Cleantech Race. And without further ado, come to the first question. Renate, you said that companies you have worked for, large utilities, usually do not have a history of R&D. They didn't need to do it. But now for the energy transition, innovation is critical. These companies have to change rather drastically. How can we move forward faster?
I think that's a very important question. As you said, last 100 years, it was basically the same, producing energy, distributing energy, etc. So first of all, we need a vision. What will be changing the next 10 to 15 to 20 years? How will the electricity ecosystem move? And this is also the tone from the top. So to have a vision first, because then you know where to go to. That's the first thing. The second thing I think is very important is you have to have a can-do attitude, which means innovation, it's not easy, but this is my idea, this is what I want to do, and don't think about the hurdles or what we can't do, but how can we change that? I give you an example. I know we always talk about Tesla, but I think that's a very good example. Tesla was able to build up a factory within 2 years. If you would have asked somebody from other German car makers, they would have told you it's not possible. And the third thing is, I think, is to overcome the not invented here syndrome. Most utility companies, they are used to, if they are inventing something, do it by themselves. And now we have to cooperate with others, with outside partners, with startups, etc. And this is, I think, some of us still have to learn.
Thank you. Mark, I know you have a long history in working on innovation and you're with the utility. How can we move faster?
I think Renate already said a couple of good words. I believe we can learn a lot from young startups. Sometimes, people believe something is not possible, and then someone comes who doesn't know about it and just does it, right? That's a saying I once read in an office from a good friend. And I think that is what we need to learn. We need to just do things. We need to do it with partners. But we also need to overcome corporate hurdles. Corporates are often very consensus-oriented. They want to always agree or the top decides. But I believe innovation in itself starts because there's a problem and there is someone who solves the problem. And that's what we need to foster. We need to give people the opportunities to solve problems in the first place and then figure out how we can scale it, how we can grow it. If we do that in a good way, I believe innovation can also happen in utilities.
Thank you. Lars, what would you say? I mean, which are the biggest innovation projects for renewable, for utilities right now? How should utilities go forward? What do they need to concentrate on?
Very good question. The focus is the right point at this point. I mean, especially we have an energy transition journey our customers have to go through, and we should accompany them in this energy transition journey. And I think, especially, and either if it's residential customers, private customers, or corporate customers, they need to integrate into their electricity utilization new products, new appliances, and we should accompany them on the road. Whether we talk about photovoltaic, whether we talk about heat pumps or electric vehicles need to be integrated, for example, in corporate fleets. So many appliances, many new electricity solutions, energy solutions we need to integrate, and we should accompany them. And This is from a customer perspective. But in the same way, we need to find better solutions for intelligence in our infrastructures and our grids, for example, to adapt to these changes in the market. And once we start to develop these projects from a customer perspective, outside in and not inside out, I think then we will be able to find better solutions than we did in the past.
Now you are all running, and you have run in other companies, innovation units. You're the ones who drive the innovation, and then you need to implement them in these huge groups you are working for. Consider this an off-the-record conversation. What's the biggest hurdles for you? Please feel free, whoever wants to jump in. Which internal hurdles need to be overcome? Tell us as much as you possibly can.
If you like, I can get started. I mean, first of all, you need to understand where we are coming from, the legacy of our companies. We, in the past, built nuclear power plants or the electricity grid. And you would all agree that on Sylvester Eve, you might accept that your phone doesn't work, but you wouldn't accept in the summer when there is a world championship that suddenly the transformators are melting everywhere and you don't have power, right? So there is a good reason why utilities have to be super risk averse. Now, innovation is the opposite of risk averse. It's risk taking. So if you do innovation in a corporate like E.ON, EnBW, or Wien Power, you need to exactly overcome this risk aversity. That's one of the challenges that you have. And I think in general, corporates, they do things in large scale. And if you do things in large scale, if you imagine a boat, a huge boat, can transport a lot, can be very efficient. But if you need to turn it quickly, we learned from the Suez Channel last year, it might be challenging. And that's the general challenge that we have in corporates. How can we make it more flexible and more agile? And if we handle that, if we find vehicles like, for example, partnering or having innovation units like ours, that can help.
Maybe I want to add something. Besides being bold, this is what you mentioned, and then thinking big, I think it's also very important to have the freedom to operate. Here, this is a budget, and we know this budget might be lost because we all know that 9 out of 10 startups, they go belly up or they don't perform. So why should it be different in innovation within big corporations? So this is the risk taking as well. But also when I talk about the freedom to operate, I also talk about, there's an innovation unit, and this innovation unit might have to have other rules, so that you don't have the same compliance rules, that you don't have to use all the internal services legally, etc., but that you are open and free to choose if something doesn't work as fast as you would like to, etc., that you could choose and pick from the outside, from the inside, etc. So I think innovation units must work a little bit different. But this doesn't mean, please don't get me wrong, that it's just a unit somewhere, out in the space, and we are the wild cowboys who can do whatever we want to. We need different rules.
But what would, specifically, maybe asking Lars, what could Frank Mastiot do to make your work maybe even easier? Increase the budget?
First of all, let me say Frank Mastiot initiated corporate innovation in EnBW, so we are very proud to work for him with such a leader. And I think it's so-called ambidexterity, isn't it? You need to combine these two kinds of cultures, and as you very well said, Mark, it's absolutely necessary that this huge corporation has processes and controls and has very, very much routine in what they do and control everything. On the other hand, we have this startup and entrepreneur atmosphere we have to create, otherwise we're not creative, otherwise we're not fast in learning, and this is a very important point. We need to learn to start many issues and stop many issues, and be aware that only the best can survive. And with this attitude, we will be able to combine both things. But it's not easy. And as you said, 9 out of 10 will not survive the first 18 months. You need to be aware of that, and that's an issue of communication. You need to be open about that.
And I think if I may add to what you just said, in a former company I worked for, the CEO once said to me, "Mark, where is the next 100 million euro business case?" And you know, I believe that's exactly one of the core mistakes big corporates can do, because innovation doesn't happen because you look for the new 100 million euro business case. Innovation happens because you want to solve a problem. And once you have solved the problem, you need to figure out how to scale it and how to make money of it. So I'm not saying ignore the business case, but I'm saying in the first place, we need to really solve the challenges of our networks and bring that forward, or do something in e-mobility or enable photovoltaic. And then we need to figure out how we can productize it and do the €1 million case.
Let us talk for a minute, or include, now we've spoken about the internal perspective. Let us include the external, the regulative system around it. I have never heard, in this case, Leo Birnbaum getting as emotional as in, yes, in the excellent podcast series, Redefining Energy, when he spoke about the smart meter rollout, or what's supposed to be the smart meter rollout in Germany. What would need to happen? Let's talk about Germany first, maybe, and you probably have examples from other countries as well, where all of your companies are operating. What would need to happen to just drive things faster? Because obviously some countries are already rolling out the second generation, and we don't get it done. What would need to change?
Maybe you can start with an example that really describes the situation, isn't it? We have a lack of charging infrastructure out there covering the electric vehicles coming on the streets and in the market. We developed an innovative charging solution for corporate garage and parking spaces. And it took the team, imagine a startup team, it took it more than 18 months to get the product certification from the Physikalische Technische Bundesanstalt. 18 months. And the team was blocked. 2-3 people.
No progress.
Almost no progress. 18 months. A startup in the external world wouldn't survive, yeah, without an investor who has a very, very long-term perspective. So that's an issue. And I think these I wouldn't say it's bureaucracy, it's regulations need to be much more focused on innovation and speed.
Examples from your side, maybe, or comments?
Well, I think also about regulation, that's an external, but also somehow an internal view as well. We can also drive regulation. So thinking about not only waiting until something is regulated, but also try to find ways around. I don't speak about, doing things you are not allowed to do, but maybe there is some gray, and let's try to leverage that gray we see, or let's also try to set standards and rules so that the regulator, is second, so that it must be regulated afterwards. This is what other startups are doing as well. I know that in the energy world, it's not that easy, because security of supply, you already said it, is very important. So I think that's another angle to that discussion as well.
Yeah, I would like to add 2 things. I mean, first of all, what you said, I fully agree. You need to lead by example. And you mentioned second rollout of smart meter. Sweden is a wonderful example. We are an international innovation team at E.ON, so we're working with all of our countries. In Sweden, we have set up a system where people use their smart meter to see exactly which of their appliances uses energy. We help those customers to save energy. We even inform them if their washing machine isn't working efficient and taking too much energy. These are all things that work in Sweden perfectly. And of course, we use this information to show the German regulator what they are missing. I think one of the problems that we have in Germany is, of course, politically, it's much easier to say, hey, subsidies on private PV, you can put more on your roof, and that's what we should. Now, the problem is they can even give them PV out for free. We will not get more on the roofs because we have not sufficient installers. and especially installers that can put PV on the roof, because it's very difficult for electricians to get the certification of a Stadtwerk in Germany to put PV on the roof. And politicians don't profit from saying, I'm fighting regulation, I'm making it easier. But it takes months until you get an approval for a PV system, so people just don't do it.
So we again have a point of making bureaucracy, of making regulation quicker. I mean, speed obviously is a very specific topic here. Okay, now I have this question to all of you, and I'd like to ask for your precise and very specific answers. If the Austrian Chancellor, Karl Nehammer, were to ask you, Renate, what's the 3 steps that should be taken to drive innovation in this utility space and make it easier for utilities to take their innovations, which you are developing in your respective units, and roll them out across the country, or generally make the life of utilities in this massive transformation of the energy transition easier? What would be your 3 wishes?
Well, the first wish would be technology agnostic. So say, okay, this is the regulatory framework. We want to decarbonize the industry, etc., or the system, but let the market decide what the best one, how to do it. So set the goal, but let the industry do it. And the second thing, I think we need subsidy and support, especially in parts where there are no investors willing to put in the money. Like, for instance, the cases in the United States, it's different because there are more and more billionaires who are willing to support that kind of technology development. So we need something else. If nobody else is doing it, it should be the state, it should be the EU. And also the subsidies make the regulations easier, so that you don't need, 10 consultants if you just want to get subsidies for a small
startup
proof of concept.
Yeah. Lars, maybe you next?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to add one thing to these subsidies. I think subsidies in some areas are needed, and it's important to push special points in the market and solutions, but it should be thought about much more about intelligent solutions that can be subsidized. It's not copper that is necessary, and our incentive schemes very often address copper, and they don't address intelligence, for example, in the grid structure. That's, from my perspective, an important point for the intelligence of subsidies. The other hand is maybe we see this in the US, and we see this sometimes already in Germany, create sandboxes where you can really work together with our corporations and work on new technologies like autonomous driving or drones or things like that. And we have to have much more of these playing fields for our and the next thing, the third thing is simply decrease bureaucracy and these, as I said, certification complexities.
Thank you. Now, Olaf Scholz calling. Mark, what shall I do? How can we drive more tech into the market?
I love the point that you made, and it's a very important one. That's why I want to reiterate it.
Great.
Make regulation modern. Don't incentivize just copper in the ground, but incentivize smart systems, because our network is designed for 50 years or longer, right? That's a payback period. Now, if you imagine what was 10 years ago and what will be in 10 years, that's complete new challenges, and we cannot overcome them with just ripping out all streets and put more copper in. We need to be smarter, and those smart solutions need to be supported. The second one that I would say is you don't need to invent new regulation. We have the clean energy package from the EU, 3,000 pages of regulation, which are in big parts not implemented. We discussed this today. Energy communities in Austria can be set up so that neighbors can share energy and get subsidies. In Germany, we are far away from implementing that. So just speed up. And then the third one is a very simple question. Listen to the customer from time to time, right? Ask the utilities, but also ask end customers and understand their problems. A lot of people want to get PV these days on the roof, but can't because there are no installers. So work on that and not on crazy other stuff.
May I just add something because of the renewable energy communities? I think that's a perfect example, because on EU level, it was decided that this should be allowed, etc. And now the countries have to put that regulation for the countries. And we really see this was done last year in Austria, and it really works. And now we have, all kinds of utilities, but also startups, etc., who are exploring that space and finding a business model doing that. And we really see a lot of communities, also in towns, but also private and companies who really want to be part of that. And they made it possible. The only thing we have to do is be flexible in terms of regulation, because this was the first, shot, and now we might have to twist there and then. So be open that it's not done, the regulation is not done for the next 10 years again.
Thank you so much, all of you. Now, what we will do is we will take the key takeaways of this, of your recommendations, of your wishes to the respective chancellors, because they apply also across Europe and probably beyond. And we will condense them into some recommendations from this finding, from these experts who really know what they're talking about, because they're working in the innovation units that will develop new business models, that will develop technologies and try to scale them across the countries in which the organizations are working. Thank you again. Make sure, everyone, to follow us through social media, and these experts, of course, as well. We are hosting the ARC Festival end of June. Make sure to follow it or even attend it. And we wish all of you, we thank you for coming again. We wish all of you a nice afternoon, and stay tuned for the next series. Thank you so much.